Welcome back to another episode of the You Be Okay podcast, and this is a podcast for anyone wondering how is everyone else doing this adulting thing. I'm here to tell you that we're figuring out just like you, and you'll be okay. This episode is about the concept of time and also the feeling of like you're running out of time. And it's a weird one because logically we know that at any point in our lives, we can make a change, we can make an improvement, we can achieve something, we can dream and then chase that dream. There's no limit. I don't think anybody's ever said, you're too old to do this, or, you're too young. Maybe you're too young to do certain things. But generally speaking, that we have time to achieve whatever we want, whenever we want. And yet, I don't think it's that uncommon that we feel like we're running out of time. And I've been thinking about this a lot, and I'm wondering I've narrowed it down to a few reasons as to why I might feel this way. The first one is obvious. It's just comparison, especially when you're somewhat younger, in your 20s, like me. You kind of look around as people leave the standard educational path where you're kind of neck and neck with all of your peers. You're on a prescribed curriculum. There is a very clear laid out path, especially if you happen to be watching this and you're still in school or uni, everybody around you is kind of doing the same thing and suffering in the same way and a bit broke and trying to figure out how to do the next thing. Versus when you get older, to your mid to late 20s, some people, buy houses, get married, they're further on in their career. Some people have no idea what they're doing and still living like a student. It's a real mixed bag, and you kind of wonder where you stack up. And then there's the flip side, which is almost like you need to play an adult. There's certain things you need to do that make you seem more adult. And that might be advancing your career or buying a house. But then I kind of wonder if you're not doing that. And to be fair, the statistics show that a lot of millennials or Gen Z, I'll probably say millennials at this stage in life, are doing things later. They get married later, they're buying houses later, they get having babies later. I think the average age for a baby in London is something like 35, someone in your mid-30s. Same for buying a house. And yet we still kind of feel like we need to achieve certain things by a certain point. And that was something that kind of plagued me for a long time. And I guess I kind of had to grieve that realization or dream or belief that probably was somewhat misguided of, I'm going to achieve all of my goals by the time I'm 30. Realistically, you can be 30 years old and not know what the fuck you're doing. And I think that's okay. I don't think there's any kind of idea or prescribed reason as to why we need life figured out. And yet, at the back of all of our minds, we kind of feel like we should have a certain level of maturity. And this could stem from the fact that our parent generation was able to do all those, standard social milestone achievements by this age. Many of them did it even younger. But just because we're not, doesn't mean that we can't. And then at the same time, we're not for a very clear reason. For example, our parents who bought a house for less than six figures. I think my dad bought his first house for like under 20K. Are now selling it for hundreds of thousands, and they have to sell it to somebody, which would be us or somebody our age. And you kind of wonder, it's like, if they can buy a house for 40K, or if they can buy a house for 20 grand and manage it under one salary and take family vacations and raise 3 kids on the average salary of 35K, which quite frankly, I don't think has changed a lot in the last 25 years. Then why can't we? What are we doing wrong? And the reality is we're probably not doing anything wrong. Life is just a bit harder. As we get older, things are more expensive, things take longer. The fact that they are selling that 20 grand house for 300K means that somebody has to be able to afford a 300K house. And that's a tall order. It's a challenging thing. So in terms of achieving the social milestones, and feeling like we're running out of time or we're falling behind, we know logically it's not true. At least I know logically it's not true. Like I've said on this podcast a few times, everything I'm telling you, I'm just telling to myself. We know logically that's not true. I mean, most of my friends who, I say most, not all, but most of my friends who are homers have had help from parents, borrow money from family. And if you're out here trying to figure it out on your own, it's going to take you a bit longer. And I think that's perfectly okay. I do think it's important to live your life with some level of intention. And part of it is accepting where you are. So sure, maybe you do want to be earning more and traveling more and being able to buy the lavish car or redo your kitchen or get out of the rental market, etc., etc. It's okay if it takes a bit longer. As long as you're very clear as to what you want and you know where your goals are going, take your time. Do it in the way that works for you. And again, there's a keeping up with the Joneses mentality about this. And again, I've had many conversations with many people just kind of wondering, like, oh, they've got a new Tesla. How did you get that Tesla? It's like, oh, I got it on finance and it's over like 5 years and this is the interest rate, etc., etc. And I'm just like, could you have got a Ford Focus? Could you have got a Ford Fiesta? But they wanted a Tesla and they wanted to live that life of somebody who owns a Tesla, for example. And I think there's wisdom in staying in your lane. And it seems negative to say as a statement to stay in your lane. But at the same time, stay in your lane and do things at a time that makes sense for you. Right now, sure, owning a property would be nice, but how I acquire that property, I'm not sure. Where I acquire that property, I'm not sure. Traveling to exotic places, I can do that. I can save for it. Certainly, I'm not saying I can hop on a plane to Fiji anytime I like. Let's not get crazy out here. But like, I can save to do that. I live in a nice flat, which I share with my housemate, who's great. It's like my little brother. Like, sure, me at this age didn't look like what my parents' life looked like at this age, but so what? It's still fun. And this also gives you a nice opportunity to dream. And dreaming's interesting. I heard a quote recently, and I forget the person who said it. This idea that when you're younger, you dream and you feel invincible, that you can achieve anything. But as you get older, you have to accept some of your limitations. And I say some, as in like realistic limitations. So let's say you want to be a DJ. Let's say you want to be a DJ. When you're young, like early 20s, late teens, that kind of thing, you can just practice for hours. Like, you have no real responsibilities. Maybe you have some bills to pay, but maybe you don't. If you don't have that much money, borrowing money or getting money from your family and parents is seen as the norm. So yeah, you can spend all your time doing that if you have that time. But for me, in my early 20s, I was working a part-time job. I was doing an architecture degree, which those who architecture is super easy. It's not. So that took a lot of my time. So now that but I did have loads of dreams. I had loads of dreams, and many of those dreams still stand. But now I'm mature enough and old enough and have a certain level of responsibility and a lifestyle that is somewhat comfortable enough that I would like to maintain, which makes me rethink how I will approach achieving my dreams. And my dreams aren't crazy. I'm not looking to be a rock star or a basketball player. I do get asked if I play American football a lot. I get asked that a lot. I don't. But yeah, the approach as to how I achieve those things. Like, I'm no longer going to enter a room as the young kid who's, got this big dream he wants to achieve and is out here looking for a mentor. I am young, and many of the people in my industry are much older than me, but there's a certain level of professionalism that I'm expected to have, which I do have, which is great. There's a certain level of knowledge that I'm expected to have at this age, which I do have, which is great. But it does mean that in approaching my goals, or at least approaching my dreams, you do have to take into account, okay, I do have to maintain, I do have to pay rent, I do have to pay my bills. As I progress in my career, maybe some more expensive do come up, for example, maybe a car. And these are certain things I am required to have to keep my life operational. So where do I have the time? For example, starting this podcast. This was something that I thought about for a while. I think I've thought about starting this for maybe a year, and it's been a messy year. But I thought about this for a while, and a lot of it was, somewhat imposter syndrome, but other parts of it was I just don't have the time. I don't have the capacity to do this right now. And now that I have started it, it's sure I can want this to go to the moon and be big and be like shits and gigs and, But right now, at this stage of that dream, for example, it's just consistency. How can I just keep uploading these videos, and can I get into the habit of filming or writing and planning and filming and editing consistently, so I can pop out one of these videos every week and then just see how that fits into my life. And I think that's kind of an important part of time generally, is that you have to let time do its thing. And if you're doing the actions and you're taking the steps and you're making the progress and you're committing to creating something, then outside of that, you've done all you can. The rest of it is time. And it might take longer than you think. And that's the part that me, I have to get used to and I have to get comfortable with that. The things I want, the things I thought I could get, I don't know, by 25 or 26 or something like that, maybe it'll be 35 or 36. And that's okay, because by the time I get there, one, I would know I've earned it. There will be no imposter syndrome. I will be mature enough to handle whatever pressures come with that. And yeah, it would fit more into my life. At least I hope it will fit more into my life in a more sustainable way. And I wouldn't have negated or neglected other aspects of my life. For example, I know, like, if you follow Alex Hormozi, for example, he is just work. Like, if you're sad, work. If you're happy, work. If you're miserable and depressed, work. Work is the answer. And work until your fingers fall off. And that's great, but I don't think I have that kind of wherewithal. And that's okay, because I think most people don't have that kind of wherewithal. And there are so many avenues to success that it doesn't have to be so hardcore. So I still want to exercise. I still want to hang out with my friends. Still want to date and figure out relationships as well as achieve. And I think it's just knowing where your limits are in each of those aspects, so you can allocate the appropriate amount of time required to take action. Once you take action, then you have to just let time do its thing. And I also think, and this is a recent phenomenon, I don't think our parent generation had to deal with, yeah, sure, social media, but what's on social media? There is a lot of attention on young people and people in their early 20s, people in their teens. Hell, there are children millionaires, okay? There are children millionaires, and it's skewed our perception of how long it takes to be successful. Sure, Stephen Bartlett became a millionaire at 22, but Stephen Bartlett is a crazy motherfucker, okay? And his podcast, Diary of a CEO, is very successful. I think 7 million followers. And make no mistake, his podcast is excellent. His production is excellent. He uploads consistently Monday and Thursday for the past, I don't know, 5 years, without fail, constantly iterating. But he started that podcast literally just like this, kind of talking about what's on his mind, and then he got his CEO friends to come on and do the same, and over time it organically grew. He also had the resources to put that much money into production, which most people won't have. It doesn't mean that you can't get started, and it doesn't mean that you can't make progress on what you want to achieve. It may just mean that you have to move your time horizon. But yeah, there is a lot more attention on young and early achievers, and yeah, it skews our understanding of how long it actually takes to be successful and what the average is. And I used to have this bad relationship with being average, this idea that you have to be special, like special or out of the ordinary is the standard, and it isn't. Most people live regular lives and they have regular jobs, and they come back and, quite frankly, scroll social media and watch Netflix. And hell, I mean, I did that for a little while. But then, yeah, you have to look at what you want and what you want your life to actually look like. There's no shortcuts. Yeah, so you have to aim correctly, take steps, make progress, and then just see where you land and detach yourself from how long it's going to take. Now, I'm not saying go indefinitely. If you're, for example, if I'm still doing this podcast in 10 years and it's still at the same level, then clearly I need to reassess something. I don't know but I suspect eventually, like, it will gain momentum, or maybe it won't, and then I can reevaluate what my goals are with this podcast. But yeah, I think it's all relative. I don't think we should be concerned too much, at least when it comes to the things we really want. I don't think we should be concerned too much about how long it's going to take. And it's better to be comfortable with the idea that it's going to take a little bit longer, or maybe a lot longer than what we want. But progress is important. And I suppose the other thing I want to touch on, and this actually might kind of factor into, I know, this shared collective impatience that we have, or this misunderstanding as to what's successful, is how dopamine affects our mind. For example, things like scrolling through social media, watching Netflix, playing video games, all of that stuff is fun, or at least can be fun. And the amount of dopamine you get is palpable. At the same time, it's also easy dopamine. There's a level of effort and energy required to earn dopamine outside of, digital entertainment. Going to the gym, you still get dopamine. Working on a project, you get dopamine. Figuring out a very difficult problem, you get dopamine. But that dopamine took effort. It took time. But on the flip side, so eventually that dopamine will dissipate from your brain. You are then left with pride watching, 6 hours of Netflix. You definitely get that dopamine for 6 hours. But afterwards, you're not left with pride. A lot of the times, at least in my life, I was left with guilt that I should have done something more productive. Even now, filming this podcast, yes, this is something I want to do. This is something I fit into my week. But I had a long day. I went to work. I had a friend over for dinner. It's 10:35. It's been a long day. I could very easily just say, cool, I'm crashing, getting to bed. I'm just going to watch TV for a few hours before I go to sleep. But I know that I wanted to get one episode of this podcast out every week and talk about something that I actually care about, something that's on my mind that might help somebody else. And that's why I'm doing it. At least that's the reason why I started this podcast. And therefore I have an active why as to why filming this video or recording this podcast at 10:30 at night is necessary. It's something I want to do, and I know that tomorrow's me will be proud. So yeah, there is an interesting way of looking at time of, the mega uber duper success might come, it might not come. That's less important. As long as you can do the activity and improve and progress over time, that's good. But then also shorten your horizon to when you wake up tomorrow and you reflect on your day. What are you going to be proud of? Are you going to be proud of the fact that you watched Netflix for a few hours? Or are you going to be proud of, I filmed this video and now I have something to edit. Now I have something to work on, a project that I can progress. And I think that's all important. And you don't know where the opportunities are going to come. You don't know who's going to see your work. But if you put your heart into it and then you put it out into the world with all good intentions, something good will come from it. And I think that's important. Yeah, and also being true to who you are. Being true to who you are, that's important. There are many different ways of creating content and even the concept of creating content. Me personally, I'm a builder. I like making things in real life. I do wonder about the generation that wants to be content creators, because who's going to build the bridges? At the very least, yes, I make this podcast and I put it out in the world and I hope it helps people. But in my day-to-day, I'm building buildings. That's what I do. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. Sure, the capacity in which I do that or the position I hold in the design team or in the construction process will change over time. But the ultimate goal is to build cool shit. That's what I'm here to do. I decided that years ago. That's my purpose. And the pursuit of that provides me with some level of dopamine that makes me keep going, because building shit is hard. Okay, construction is a difficult process. Whoever told you developers and contractors are out here just raking it in while they're sitting on the beach, I don't know who you're talking to. Building shit is difficult. It's hard, especially if you're an architect. God damn. But I enjoy it. I love it. I love the idea of having an idea in my mind, putting it on a piece of paper and then putting it through the process. And it's a messy process. I don't think a single construction project has ever gone on time, to budget and to program perfectly the whole time. There was always curveballs. Some of them are from your mistakes. Many of them are from circumstances you had no control over. There could be a political argument between us and China, and now suddenly steel is 3 times the price. Stuff like that happens all the time. Or a while ago, there was a barge stuck. I'm trying to remember the location. Anyway, a big shipping barge got stuck. Everything for the next few months was way more expensive because trade stopped or trade was halted, in which case we had to resource things from different places that we otherwise wouldn't do. And that makes things more expensive. And that will affect construction. So many different factors in doing this. And yet this is the struggle I've chosen to take upon myself, because what's more important than the buildings and places you go and interact with every day? Creating a city, not all at once, okay? We ain't out here trying to make the line. The organic process of creating a city is so interesting, and all the negative spaces in between buildings is interesting, and how people, some of the coolest places are just under a train track. Those little, what used to be like mechanics and tire shops are now smoke houses and cool clubs and coffee shops. So many bloody coffee shops, but they're interesting because what was viewed as not negative, but I say negative as in positive and negative. Say you build 4 buildings and there's space in between the 4 buildings, that's negative space. What was viewed as something that's just a byproduct of the thing you're creating also has life and also could be in a very interesting space. I just love all of that. And that's what I'm put here to do now. Yeah. Architecture school sells you a dream. That dream is a lie. But it doesn't mean that dream is impossible. And yeah, sure, grieving the fact that, oh, that's my original thought of how I'll achieve my dream is not how it's going to be done. Doesn't mean I can't achieve it. It just means I have to reevaluate how I get there, which naturally will take me longer. And I'm okay with that. I'm fully okay with that. It took me a while. It took me a while to accept it, but I'm okay with that because I know where I'm going. And anybody who wants to join me on this path and be a part of the tribe or be a part of my journey, you're more than welcome. If you don't, Godspeed, God bless, wish you the best. None of my concern. So yeah, don't feel like, especially, like me or like anyone in their late 20s, think like 30s. All my friends, all of them, apart from my housemate downstairs, all my friends are over 30 and I don't view any of them as more mature or old or past their prime. We're all just getting started. Like, we're all the same. Yeah, a friend of mine just turned 31. I was like, rah, 31? That sounds like an age. I was like, I'm 2 years away from that. Like, what am I talking about? But yeah, there's some sort of societal or social programming that makes us believe that there's a limit to how much we can achieve by a certain point, and there isn't. The very common quote about whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I'd rather think I can because it's way more hopeful, way less depressing, but also more true, because the alternative is to do nothing and then end your life with regrets, and that's not worth it. So yeah, don't be too concerned about feeling like you're running out of time, because it's not true. I mean, ultimately time is made up. If it was slightly further away from the sun, it will take the earth a longer time to orbit the sun, in which case a year would be longer. So somebody who was 30 might have been 25. Would that matter? Would that make a difference? No, of course not. It's just how we measure. So keep going. If you have a goal, if you have a desire, if you have a dream, if you have a path and you think it's going to take too long, who cares? Because that time is going to pass anyway. And when it does, what would you rather have done? And that is something I think about every day. Every time I take an action, every time I pick up this camera to record a podcast, every time I send out a fee proposal or talk to a new potential client, hell, every time I go to work, what am I trying to achieve? How is this moment helping me? Stacking little chips. How is this moment stacking little chips on my way to that goal? And I will keep collecting those chips until I cash out. And when I cash out, it will just be to make a cooler, better, bigger project. Because I'm going to do this forever. Actually, yeah, even the concept of retirement never made sense to me. Or certainly retiring early. Is why would you pick a thing that you don't enjoy, that you're trying to find the fastest escape route? Everyone's like, well, at least I've spoken to people say, oh, wouldn't it be nice to retire early? But then what do I do? It's like, oh, you do whatever you want. Why not choose to do whatever I want right now? The famous fisherman story of a businessman from America goes to, I want to say it was Thailand, but goes to an island and meets a fisherman. Tells the fisherman, oh, what do you do with your life? It's like, I wake up, I kiss my wife, take my kids to school, I fish all day. It's like, oh, but you're quite good at fishing. You can make a business. It's like, okay, how would I do that? It's like, well, you come out here, you fish, but then you sell it and you save the money so you can buy a bigger boat. And it's like, okay, what would I do with a bigger boat? And it's like, well, you can fish more. You can buy nets and equipment and catch more fish. It's like, okay, what do I do with that? Well, then you sell that fish and buy 2 boats or 3 boats, and then you have a fleet, and then you hire employees. And once you have the employees, then they can fish for you, and then they can fish more fish, and then you can keep buying boats and keep increasing your empire of fishers or fishermen until you create this corporation. And so, okay, once I have that corporation, then what I do? Well, then once it's a large corporation, you can actually IPO it, and then you can sell the stocks, and then you can make money off the stocks, and you can completely exit your company. And it's like, okay, so once I'm rich and successful and I've exited my company, I've made all this money, what would I do? And the American businessman says, well, at that point, you can do whatever you want. It's like, well, I want to wake up every day, kiss my wife, take my kids to school, and go out here and fish. I do that right now. And the American businessman paused and couldn't argue. And that's kind of the point. Like, I have really no intention of ever stopping creating things. At least I don't know why. And like I said, the capacity will change. Yes, I can't imagine I can pull 18-hour days when I'm 85. But maybe those 18-hour days are really just meetings and some hobbies and making sure this project is running smoothly with the vast amount of experience I would have by that point. Yeah, I can engage in it differently, but the point is that I don't have any intention of not engaging in the creation of cool things. So yeah, I'm less concerned about how long it takes me to reach my dreams or my goals, and more concerned as to how do I integrate them into my life in a consistent daily basis. And I think that's half the battle. Yeah, don't quit before you reap the fruits of your labor. Yeah, keep going, and don't be concerned by that 12-year-old millionaire on what the Forbes, I don't know, 20 under 20. Yeah, keep going, because it's your life. What they're doing, what that millionaire's doing, what your friend's doing in Fiji, what car they bought, whether they have those things or not, it will not affect your life. So you stay focused. Like I said, everything I'm telling this camera is things I'm telling to myself. You stay focused and you keep moving, and then see where you end up. Yeah, before I used to think I know exactly, specifically, right down to the moment of my day, I know exactly what it's going to be like. Realistically, I don't. I have no idea what the future's going to hold. But I do know if I keep going down this path, it's going to be real interesting. It's going to be real interesting. And I'm more excited to find out than to be right. I think being right is boring, because there is an assumption that once you get the thing that you want, you'll be happy. I don't think that's true. I think if you work hard and you're intentional and you allow life to unfold, you'll be surprised, and that will create a level of awe that you otherwise wouldn't see. Yeah, maintain your wonder and curiosity as you move forward. I think that is a better way of living life. And then yeah, allow life to surprise you. Yeah, that sounds like a more interesting way to live. At least, yeah, it does now. So don't worry about it. If you feel like you're running out of time, if you feel like you're behind or too late, you're not. Your life is your life. Where you are in it, in that journey, in that process, is where you are. Take gratitude and take comfort in the fact that you've come this far. Like, imagine yourself, I don't know, 5-10 years ago. You'd be happy to be where you are now, back then. So yeah, just remember that you are making progress. Even if it seems slow, even if it seems slower than others, it's probably not an average. You're probably okay. You have time, so keep going. And remember, you will be okay. All right, that's it. Until next time, peace.